This afternoon, President Trump issued a campaign tweet lying to voters about the Republican position on health insurance for people with pre-existing conditions. The tweet says, all Republicans support people with pre-existing conditions. And if they don't, they will after I speak to them. I am in total support. Also, Democrats will destroy your Medicare, and I will keep it healthy and well. Donald Trump, of course, does not know the meaning of the word healthy. Here's what Donald Trump promised when he was running for president.
Repeal and replace that horror show called Obamacare. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare.
We're losing with Obamacare, which will be repealed and replaced.
Obamacare is a disaster. We're going to repeal it and replace it.
You know, my poll numbers are going through the roof. You know why? I really believe a big part of it is Obamacare, because we're going to repeal it and replace it.
And now Republican poll numbers are in trouble because of exactly. And the Republicans tried to repeal Obamacare and failed. And then the Republicans did manage to find room in their giant deficit exploding tax cut for the rich to effectively repeal the individual mandate to buy health insurance in Obamacare. And then the Trump Justice Department joined Republican state attorneys general in a lawsuit that seeks to repeal all of Obamacare, including the legal provision that requires health insurers to cover people with pre-existing conditions. Donald Trump and the Republicans have done everything they possibly can to eliminate the guarantee of health insurance for people with pre-existing conditions. And now that they have discovered that that is a very unpopular thing to do, they have simply begun to lie about their position while continuing to push the lawsuit that would, in fact, eliminate coverage for pre-existing conditions.
We can protect pre-existing conditions, and you need to understand, everyone agrees we're going to protect pre-existing conditions.
It was Donald Trump who called him lying, Ted, not me. Ted Cruz is lying, of course, and he is one of the Republican Senate candidates who's smart enough to know that he is lying. Republican Senate candidate in Arizona, Martha McSally, is telling the same kind of lie to voters there. Josh Hawley, Republican Senate candidate in Missouri, is telling the same kind of lie in his campaign against Democrat Claire McCaskill, who actually does support coverage for pre-existing conditions and actually voted for the only federal law in American history that does that, Obamacare. Republican Governor Scott Walker is struggling in his reelection bid in Wisconsin. Republicans have actually advised the White House not to waste President Trump's campaign time in Wisconsin, where they believe Scott Walker cannot win reelection. But President Trump wants to go to Wisconsin anyway, probably just to remind people that he won Wisconsin. And when President Trump does campaign with Scott Walker in Wisconsin, you will surely hear some version of this big lie.
Covering pre-existing conditions is personal to me. Plus, it's just the right thing to do. As long as I'm governor, I will always cover pre-existing conditions.
It is the right thing to do, but Governor Scott Walker is fully supportive of the wrong thing. He's fully supportive of his state attorney general, who has joined the federal lawsuit to effectively repeal Obamacare and eliminate the federal guarantee covering pre-existing conditions. Joining us now, Jared Bernstein, senior fellow at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. He was an economic policy advisor to Vice President Biden. And Ron Klain is with us. He's the former chief of staff to Vice Presidents Joe Biden and Al Gore, and a former senior aide to President Obama. And Ron Klain, I have to say, when a party gets in trouble campaigning because they were on the wrong side of an issue, I have never before seen the strategy of let's all hold hands and just lie about everything we've been trying to do for the last 2 years.
Yeah, you know, Lawrence, voters trusting Republicans to protect their pre-existing conditions at this stage would be like Dorothy in the very last scene of The Wizard of Oz, handing Toto over to the Wicked Witch and saying, I'm sure this will all be fine. I mean, Republicans voted 60 times to get rid of protection for pre-existing conditions. They went to court to get rid of it. President Trump campaigned on getting rid of it, and then he threw a beer bash in the Rose Garden to celebrate Republicans passing a bill to get rid of it. They tried to strong-arm John McCain on one of his last votes in the Senate to get rid of it. And if all that wasn't enough, just the other day, Mitch McConnell promised that if the Democrats don't take back the House and the Senate, he will try again to get rid of it. So it's absolutely clear what's going to happen, and the only way to protect coverage for pre-existing conditions is for voters to elect a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Otherwise, this will go away.
Jared Bernstein, can the Republicans just get away with this lie? Is the subject complicated enough that the voters just can't follow this?
Well, not if they listen to the very, very clear logic that both you and Ron Klain just laid out. In fact, he even threw Toto into the mix. Practically broke my heart there for a second. Of course, people who are paying any attention to the reality of the situation, as the two of you have just articulated, have to know that these lies are so pervasive. But there is a wrinkle that I want people to know about. Some of the Republican plans argue that insurers must cover everyone, all comers. They can't deny coverage. And some of these plans actually do have that. However, they then say those insurers can charge people with pre-existing conditions whatever they want in terms of premiums, and they don't have to even cover illnesses related to the pre-existing condition. So if you have heart disease and you get coverage, they can charge you hundreds of thousands of dollars for your premium. And if you have a heart attack, your insurer can say, well, we're not covering those claims because that was pre-existing. So it's precisely what you and Ron said. Sometimes you have to read the fine print, but I think at this point, I got to say, I mean, if a voter does not recognize that these folks are not just gunning for pre-existing conditions, but actually gunning for Medicare and Social Security to help offset the cost of their corporate tax cut, then they're just not paying attention.
And Ron, I think it's fair to assume that Donald Trump has absolutely no idea what he was talking about and has no idea how pre-existing conditions works in law now and how it would work if the lawsuit was successful. But people like Ted Cruz know exactly what they are lying about.
Yeah, you know, it really is interesting. As you said, maybe Donald Trump doesn't know better, although it's kind of crazy that he has his own attorney general in court suing to take away this coverage as he's promising that he'll protect it. But a lot of these Republicans do know better. What you're really seeing is that in a reversal of where we were just 2 or 4 years in American politics, the Affordable Care Act is popular. Democrats are running on the Affordable Care Act, and they are going to win elections on the Affordable Care Act. And that's a dramatic reversal in how the public regards this law. It's a great credit to President Obama. He was right in 2010. A lot of people paid a big political price to pass this law, and finally the American people are appreciating what it does for people.
And you know what's interesting is that I agree with Ron about the popularity of the Affordable Care Act, but I also would like to point out the unpopularity of the tax cut. Okay, so the Republican National Committee just leaked a memo, came out, where they were advising their candidates that voters recognize that Republicans want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid in order to offset the cost of their tax cuts. That's not a popular message. And I think it's probably pretty hard at this point to find a Republican who is running on these deficit-inducing tax cuts, because we now have Republican leaders like Mitch McConnell pointing to those deficits as a rationale for cutting Social Security and Medicare, programs that Republican-based voters actually like a lot.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.